You're watching Voices in Mystery, and I'm your host, Nancy Carlson. With me now is mystery author Terence Faherty, and actually Terence is oftentimes guest on our show. Welcome back to Voices in Mystery.
Thank you.
It's great to have Terence. You just moved from one house to another in the Indianapolis area?
I did.
And you're resting up from that, are you?
Yeah, all the downsizing is terrible.
Downsizing. You didn't get rid of your books and your posters and all those things from your writing career.
I've had to get rid of some that I've collected over the years.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, you're a prolific writer, written many short stories, which are pretty easy to store,
Yeah.
and then several novels in two different series. And the first series I want to talk about is the Scott Elliott mystery series, because that's the new book coming out in 2011.
Right.
So tell our viewers who Scott Elliott is, what he's done in previous books, and then set up the new book, Dance in the Dark, for us.
Okay, Elliot is a LA private eye. He actually works for a security company that gets involved in the shadier side of the movie business. They're the people you call if you have a starlet end up in a drunk tank in Encino or someplace and you want to cover it up. But he's a former Hoosier, former actor who served in World War II and came back from the war, found out his acting career dried up and blown away. And instead of going back to Indiana, he stayed on, hired on as a security specialist. And he debuted in a book called Kill Me Again, which is set in 1947. And all my books kind of involve pastiches of famous movies. That one was Casablanca. And he returned in Come Back Dead, which won the Shamus Award. That was a pastiche of some films of Orson Welles, the Magnificent Ambersons especially.
Okay, an Indiana novel.
Yep. And he ends up in Indiana in the end of that novel, Elliot and everybody. And then we jump to 1962 for Raise the Devil, and the movie that is being I'm having fun with there is Cleopatra. And finally, this book, Dance in the Dark, is 1969. Vietnam is going on, and Elliot has a son in the service. And as the book begins, Elliot's learned that his son is missing in action. And he and his wife are, they're having a lot of problems about that. And Elliot takes the job of finding a missing teenager. A friend calls and says, "My daughter's run away. Will you help me find her? The police don't care." And his wife, Elliot's wife, doesn't want him to have anything to do with anything but sitting by the phone. But Elliot goes out to try to find this girl. It's kind of a substitute. He can't help his son, so he tries to help her.
Boy, what movie pastiche is that?
Actually, the one that he ends up getting involved in is, that I pastiche, is Easy Rider.
Oh, yeah.
Which was the big kind of countercultural film of that year with Peter Fonda and Jack Nicholson. And I call it something else. Duo Glide Rider, I think is what I call it. But so he gets involved with a bunch of young idealistic filmmakers working for this cheap studio, but some of them are involved in smuggling drugs up from Mexico, and Elliot's hired to kind of cover that up, but he gets involved in murder and with motorcycle gangs. Actually, one of the inspirations of the book was that I wanted to have Elliot as kind of a 40s private eye end up at a 60s rock concert like Altamont, the one in California in '69 that got out of hand, the Stones concert. So I even pastiche that concert so that he can go there and get beaten up by the motorcycle gang himself.
Now, this book is coming out, so is there another one waiting at the publisher for publication?
Well, there is a collection of Elliot short stories called The Hollywood Op. They're stories that mainly that have appeared in Ellery Queen magazine, and that's being published in 2011 too. And there is a chance, I'm speaking with a publisher now, that there'll be another Owen Keene novel.
Good, I want to talk about him.
And that may come out later in 2011 or early 2012.
Is it written?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. You're sitting on it.
Yes, I have been.
All right. Tell our viewers about Owen Keene.
Well, he's my first detective. He's an amateur sleuth, Jersey guy like me. I'm a native of New Jersey, although I've lived in Indiana for years and years. But He's a failed seminarian who dropped out of the seminary because of a crisis of faith, and he's never gotten over that. And he's kind of a compulsive solver of human mysteries because he has the odd idea that he can find clues to the big mysteries by solving these little human ones. So he's been an interesting character for me. There's 7 books. This would be the 8th book in the Owen Keene series. And he's frustrating in a way because he always solves the mystery, but he never gets the big answers he wants. So he's kind of unsatisfied from book to book.
And what led you to write a failed seminarian as a lead character?
Well, it's been a while, but I knew guys from my generation who had gone into the seminary, so I had that kind of thought in the background. But when I came up with Keene, I was working as a technical writer, but I'd always wanted to be a novelist. So I was working for Indianapolis Power and Light down in Indianapolis. So I had this feeling that I had myself fallen away from this higher calling. I mean, it was like, how did I end up doing this when I wanted to do that? And so I knew enough about fiction writing to know that you don't, from that starting point, you don't write about a technical writer who wanted to be a novelist. You change it a little. So I changed it to a guy who had wanted to be a priest and help people, and he ended up he is now kind of a nutty amateur sleuth who helps people.
I'd like to talk about the genre short story. You've written a lot of short stories and published them. Why do you do that? And is it harder to write a short story than a novel, or just different?
It's just different. I think it uses a different, muscle set maybe. But I do it because it's a great way to reach new readers. Ellery Queen magazine and Alfred Hitchcock magazine, they're read by tens of thousands of people every month. And I write both Keene and Eliot stories, although I've now begun with Alfred Hitchcock to write non-series stories. So partly it's promotion, and partly it's just because you can't get that many. I want to know what happens to Eliot and Owen between the novels. So I kind of fill the gaps in with short fiction.
Have you been with the same publisher all along?
No.
How does that change?
Well, I guess I've been with a number of them, like a lot of writers, and it changes when the business changes, I guess. Eliot's currently on his 3rd publisher, and Keene will be on his 2nd. So
Yeah, well, it's hard. It's a changing business, that's for sure.
it is, but every business is facing those same challenges.
That's true. Well, I'd like to thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank
I want
you.
our viewers to be sure and pick up Dance in the Dark by Terence Faherty, who's an oftentimes guest on our show, and it's in the Scott Elliott series, and we sure thank you for being on the show. And I'm Nancy Carlson for Voices in Mystery.